welcome into my kitchen. Many of you already know me. My name's Kathy, and today is the premiere of my very first cooking video. So I thought that I would start out with something that I have been making for years and years. It's something that I always say I can make with one hand tied behind my back and probably my eyes closed. And that's a homemade biscuit. And I'm talking about a good southern homemade biscuit made with buttermilk. So we are going to go ahead and get started, but I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Now we're going to keep everything on the same channel, so that way when you come to Kathy's Random Acts of Stamping and Cooking, you will be able to see whether it's a cooking video or whether it's a crafting video and choose if you want to watch whichever one. Hopefully you'll stay and watch everything that I do, but I understand if you don't. Some people aren't into cooking, some people aren't into card making and crafting, and that's okay. I'm just so happy that you're here, and let's go ahead and get started on these homemade biscuits. Let me get my camera turned down and I'll show you what we need. Okay, I think this is a little bit better, but what I have here is self-rising flour. We're going to be measuring that out. I have some buttermilk, and I make my own buttermilk, and I will show y'all how to do that at some point. Very simple. If you buy buttermilk one time, you'll never have to buy it again. And this is a trick that I just recently learned. We're going to need some baking powder, not baking soda, but baking powder, and we're going to need some butter. So those are the only ingredients. This is like a 4-ingredient. Sometimes I do put about a teaspoon of sugar in my biscuits, but it's really not necessary. So let's get a measuring cup. And you're going to start out with 2 cups, but I was saying we're going to sift our flour, so I'm going to put my sifter right there, and I am going to put in 2 cups of self-rising flour. You might say, well, why are you adding baking powder if you're using self-rising? Because I found out from trial and error, and this is kind of my own take on this biscuit recipe, I found out that if you put your baking powder in with self-rising flour, you'll get a higher rising biscuit. So let's grab a tablespoon, and we're going to sift this in with our flour. 1 tablespoon of baking powder. So now we're just going to go ahead and sift this all together. And other than a fork and your hands, that's all of the utensils you're going to need. So we've got our flour sifted, and I like to just kind of go back through it with my fingers like that. Makes it really good. Now we're going to grate our butter, and you can use a box grater, or you can use a, let's see which is the best way to get this to see. Let's see. Okay. I'll put this right here. And I'm going to take my it's actually 6 tablespoons of butter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just cut off the 2 tablespoons off of one end. I'll just put that in my butter dish. We'll use it to butter the biscuits later. And I'm going to drop this into the hopper of my little grating tool. This works so good. And let's see if we can get this more on focus. I think that'll work. And what this is going to do, it has a locking mechanism. It's going to lock it down, and look how that grates that butter. And once it gets down low, you've got this little pusher that you can push in here and push all of your butter right down into there. I like to back it up and do it a few times because I want all of that butter in my biscuits. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take this apart. This is such a great little tool to have. It's a time saver for sure. And the cleanup on it is so simple. You just throw the pieces in the dishwasher and they just clean up really good. Or it's easy enough that you can actually just put it in the sink in some hot water. And let's lock it down for a minute and get this off. And I got a little bit of butter left up in here, so I'll make sure I get all of that butter out. So I want all of it. Now I'll just lay this over in the sink. Now we're going to take this butter. It looks like a lot because it's been grated. And we are going to dump it into our flour. Let me move this grater. There we go. So we're just going to dump this into our flour. And you don't want to handle the butter any more than you have to because you don't want it to melt. So with that being done, let's grab a fork. Like I said, about the only thing you're going to need here is a fork. And all I want to do is stir that butter around so it all gets coated with the flour. So simple, so easy, and this is just a easy recipe. And who doesn't love a hot biscuit, especially in the mornings for breakfast? Alright, so we got that done. Now we're going to need a measuring cup. So, you know what, I'm just going to use the one I already had. Yeah, let's just use this one. That way we're only messing up one more thing. And I'm going to take, I got a little bit of buttermilk left in my other jar. So I'm going to shake it up. Like that. That smells so good. And I'm going to start out with a cup of buttermilk. But I'm not going to put it all in. I'm going to put maybe about half of it. And then I'm going to start stirring. So just stir that buttermilk into that flour. You're definitely going to need more. But we always start out with a little. Once it starts to clump up like that, so I've got nice little clumps in there, we're going to go ahead and add the rest of our buttermilk. And stir. And like I said, we may need to add just a little bit more. You just stir this until it comes together. You don't want to overwork your biscuit flour. It's the opposite of doing yeast bread. With yeast bread, you need to knead it a lot. But with biscuits, it's considered a quick bread and you don't want to mix it too very much. All right, we're definitely going to need just maybe an eighth of a cup more of buttermilk. Pour that in. And don't worry about getting it, too wet. Or if you do put a little bit too much buttermilk in it, just sprinkle a tiny bit more flour over it. And it's a very forgiving dough and recipe. So if you get too much, don't worry. This looks like this is just about perfect. I've got a nice little clump of dough right there in the middle of my bowl. See that pretty? Still got a little bit of flour in the bottom, so I'm going to stir it around just a few more times to try to pick up all of the loose flour. That looks really good. All right, let's move the buttermilk over here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of my flour and I'm going to flour my work surface. So if you've got a pastry sheet, you can put that down. I have one, but for biscuits, I usually don't use it. I use that more if I'm rolling out a pie crust or puff pastry or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and dump this out and see how we've got a nice dough. Scrape your bowl because you want to get all of that goodness out of there. I don't know if you can see it, but do you see the specks of yellow in there? That's your crumbs of butter. So I'm going to take this and just kind of square it up a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to fold it to me and mash it down, and then turn it again. And if you need a little flour on top, by all means sprinkle just a tiny bit. You don't want a lot of flour. You want to keep it nice and soft. I'm going to pat it out, and I'm going to do that one more time. I'm just going to fold it and press, and I'm turning it. Turning it just makes sure it doesn't get stuck on your counter. Toby, no. And then I'm going to do it one more time and fold it over. So easy. I might need a little flour under it, or basically just do that and get more of that flour under it. And we're going to do this one more time. I'm going to fold it and press it, fold it and press it. That is plenty. You want to do that maybe 4 to 6 times, and then once you get it like that, you want to go ahead and pat it out in the thickness that you want. I like my biscuits to be nice and high, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my hands and press it about like that. Now I've already prepared, let me rinse my hands off. And the one thing I forgot to do, and this is bad, I forgot to preheat my oven. So I'm going to put my oven on 400. Actually, I'm going to put it on 425, and we'll drop it back to 400 when we put these in. So what I'm going to do now, I like to cut my biscuits, but I have prepared my cast iron baking pan, and it's well oiled. That's how I keep my cast iron. I always oil it with some vegetable oil and wipe it out each time I use it. So I'm going to set it over here, and we are going to get our biscuit cutter. And I like this one. I think this one is probably about a 2-inch cutter, and that's what I usually cut my biscuits on. Now I'm going to dip that in my flour, and then I'm going to just go straight down and straight up. You don't want to twist your cutter. Then I'm going to stick it back in the flour and do the same thing. And I just put it back in the flour each time. Now you can double this recipe if you want to make it, for more people. It easily doubles. So don't be afraid to do 4 cups of flour, and you'll have twice the biscuits. So I'm just going to take these out and lay them into, I need my bench scraper. Should have got that out to start with. This is a nice, easy way to get your bread up. So since he's not eating biscuits, I will probably end up freezing these for myself. So I'm going to pull that out. I left that dough wet like this because we're going to work it again once we get this last biscuit in our pan. A little bit more flour. And now I'm just going to scrunch this dough back together. And I don't want to work it, I just want to bring it together and then pat it out. But you want it to be smooth. You don't want cracks in it. So let's do our little folding mechanism. Like that. And I think we can get 2 more biscuits. Isn't that a pretty biscuit? Look at the yellow. I hope you can see it. See those specks of butter in there? That's going to give you a nice flaky biscuit. And by folding the biscuit over and over like I did, that builds your layers. So if you like a nice flaky biscuit, this is definitely the ticket. So now I've got that little bit of dough left, and I don't waste it. My My grandmother and my first husband's mother taught me how to make biscuits. So, and like I said, I have been making biscuits for so many years, I can't even count them. And I always take I used to do this for my kids. I would make a baby biscuit, and it would always be for the baby. And so I still do it, and it's just a little rolled padded biscuit. I don't cut this one. But I usually always have room for it in my pan, so it must be meant to be. And there are our biscuits. Aren't they pretty? Now I'm going to set this over on the stove, and once my oven gets preheated, we are going to go in and put these in the oven, and we're going to bake them off for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're golden brown, and then I will bring y'all right back. I'm going to clean up my work surface, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, my oven just came up to temperature, so I'm getting ready to put the biscuits in. If you noticed, I don't know if you can see that, but they've already started to rise a little bit, which is fine. So I'm going to open my oven and slide them in. And we're going to set our timer for about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. We'll go 12 minutes and then we'll be right back. Okay, our biscuits are ready to come out of the oven. I got my trusty little pot holder, so let's pull them out. And I'll bring them up and show them to you as soon as I get my oven closed. And if you're cooking with the cast iron, be very careful because it gets very, very hot. And there are our biscuits. Don't they look yummy? I'm going to get a fork and see if I can take one out. They are steaming hot because they just came out. Let's do the little baby one. It fluffed up where it's not really so much of a baby. Maybe we'll do this one. Oh, look at that. Beautifully browned on the bottom, soft, hot, and they're already buttery. So let's move our pan. I have it on a little trivet so I don't burn the counter. Like I said, you want to be very careful with the cast iron because it gets super, super hot. And remember, we had that 2 tablespoons of butter left over. We are going to butter up this biscuit and then give it a try. So I'm going to go in with my fork. Look how beautiful flaky that biscuit is. Isn't that gorgeous? I like butter, so I'm going to put a good little pat of butter on mine. And we'll put this little piece back over it. Let that cool just for a minute. I think it's too hot to put in my mouth. So let's see if I can bring y'all back up. There we go. I think these turned out perfect. And some apple butter, some jelly or jam. I prefer jam over jelly. I think it has more flavor. Any type of preserves. I love peach preserves with a glass of milk and a biscuit. Oh, that's breakfast for me. I love bread. My husband teases me all the time because I can't do low carb for that reason. I have to have potatoes and bread. Those are a staple for me. And I think it has a lot to do with my Italian background. I love bread. And I love pastas and I love potatoes. So I'm going to be making, coming up soon, some homemade gnocchi. And we're going to make chicken gnocchi soup like Olive Garden. But I'm going to make my own gnocchi so they won't be tough. They'll be light and fluffy and delicious. So stay tuned for that. But let's go in with a bite of biscuit. Look at that. That is so good. You gotta try this recipe. It's simple, easy. Follow the steps that I showed you, and I promise they will turn out perfect. So, thanks so much for tuning in on my very, very first food video or cooking video. I need a drink. I appreciate you being here. God bless and keep you. And I always close my videos with this statement. Let everything that you do and say bring honor and glory to our Savior Jesus. He is worthy. So until we cook again, take care of each other, love one another, be kind, and be thoughtful. I love you guys. Bye-bye.